is up YouTube? This is Hypergon. You shut the cap. Back again for another video. Now, the anime is full of a lot of really cool and interesting archetypes, a lot of which I wish I could play. Unfortunately, Konami has yet to actually go about making a lot of these archetypes. And to me, that feels like a bit of a tragic waste. So, today, we're going to count down my top 5 most wanted decks from the anime. Now, the rules for this is that it has to be an archetype that is not yet in production or showing any signs of being in production. And I can't just take additions to existing archetypes. So, by those two rules, archetypes like the Abyss Actors, which are currently set to be released in the near future, and the new Destiny Heroes, which are just an extension of previously existing archetype, do not count. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Starting things off, we have the Star archetype as used by Iki Arlo, or Isai Kachidoki. Now, the Star archetype is a deck of high-level warrior monsters that is focused around getting out their fusion monsters. The fusion monsters are based around using their high levels to take advantage in battle. The first one reduces all monsters with a lower level than its attack to 0. And the other one sets all monsters' attack to 0, but then they gain attack based on their level. So, they're both essentially based around overpowering your opponent, not only through their attack, but just through their overwhelming levels as well, with the two fusion monsters being level 10 and 12 respectively. I just think it's a pretty interesting battle-based archetype that does have some potential to shine if it gets a little bit more support than what we've seen in the anime. But I'm willing to start with anything, because the deck does have a lot of interesting creative possibility to it. Anyway, moving on to number 4. Coming in at number 4, we have the Cookmates as used by Reed Pepper or Michio Makoda. Now, these are a really interesting archetype since it's one of the few non-extra deck based decks in the series. What it does is it focuses on getting out the high-level Cookmate monsters and then returning them to the hand in order to get rid of your opponent's monsters and do damage. It's a pretty interesting concept that we haven't really seen in a lot of archetypes before. Now, yes, there are decks that focus on returning cards to the hands to get off the effect, like the Mist Valleys and even technically the Yosenjus. But the way this deck goes about it is still pretty interesting and creative, and I think it would be a lot of fun to mess with. Anyway, moving on to number 4. For number 3, we're going to be taking a trip back to the Synchro Dimension for the first deck type used by Sergei Volkov, and that would be the Thorn Prisoners. Now, the Thorn Prisoners are a pretty interesting archetype because it does one of my personal favorite things to see out of a deck, in that it uses 2 different summoning methods. The first kind that it uses is Synchro Summon, which makes sense since Sergei is originally from the Synchro Dimension. However, as he reveals later on in his duel against Yuzu, it's actually capable of performing fusion as well, and this is mostly because of his affiliation with Jean-Michel Roger, who is originally of the Fusion Dimension. And I just always enjoyed watching decks that were capable of performing these multiple summoning types. I've always just found it a really interesting concept, and one that I don't think is explored enough in a lot of decks. On top of that, the way they work is interesting in that they take a lot of damage, but when they are ready to go on the offensive, the Thorn Prisoners are capable of dealing far more damage than they had originally received. So, I do think it's an interesting take and give sort of deck type, and one that does have a lot of potential to maybe not be meta, but at least be kind of fun to mess with. Moving on to number 2. Quick question for you all. Who here likes Black Wings? What's that? No one? Well, what if I told you there was a bug version of it? And yes, there is. It's used by Shinji Weber and called the B-Force. This is supposed to be a sort of unison thing with the Black Wings, since in Japan they are known as the Black Feathers. So having them B-Force makes them both sort of a B archetype, if you will. At least that's how the Wikipedia chooses to explain it. Go with that what you will. But as for how they work, like I said, it's basically insect Blackwings, in that they focus on spamming the field as quickly as possible in order to get out their larger synchro monsters. And honestly, I think that's kind of an interesting idea for bugs. Bugs don't really have any good synchro decks that I can think of off the top of my head. The only good one I can think of in recent history would be Insectors, and we all know what happened to them. So I feel like bugs could use a little bit of a boost in terms of just representative power. And I think the B-Force would maybe not be the most effective means of doing it, but probably be one of the most interesting. Moving on to our top contender, number 1. Rounding off our list today, we have the deck used by Riley Akaba, or Rera Akaba, and that would be the CC monsters. Now, similar to his older brother's deck, the DDs, the CCs are again a group of fiend monsters that are based around abusing multiple summoning methods, i.e. fusion, synchro, and XCs. However, what makes Riley's deck so interesting is that it takes your opponent's monsters. Essentially, the main monster of the deck is able to copy what the opponent's monster is, and then its spell and trap cards are able to help it essentially use said monsters in order to fusion, synchro, and XC summon their more powerful monsters that are capable of doing massive damage to the opponent. And I think that's a really interesting idea. As I said earlier, I enjoy decks that are capable of using multiple extra deck methods, so the idea that one can use all of them has always been kind of interesting to me. But for some reason, it didn't really click with me with the other two that we have so far with Yuya and Declan's decks. However, Riley's deck feels more interesting. It takes what the opponent has, which means that he always has some sort of an option depending on how diverse the extra deck is. And since it's an anime, I'm pretty sure his extra deck is pretty diverse. So I'd like to see them bring it to the real world and just see what they can do with it. And that'll just about wrap things up for this week. What'd you guys think? Did I miss any really cool anime archetypes that you guys would like to see? Let me know down in the comments below. Of course, you can also let me know your thoughts and opinions on my Facebook page. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for further content. Until next time, peace.